Chris and I have been having a conversation about ways to adjust a Jiu-Jitsu game for people with restrictions in hip mobility. So for people who don't have as much hip flexion, for example, it makes it quite hard to play certain positions. And so Chris has got a few tips about ways to make that work for you. Go ahead. What would your top tips be for somebody in that position?
So for me, it would be to create like a top-heavy game, so takedowns and guard passing. On the topic of guard passing, I think passing on your knees or passing off sweeps and takedowns is important. You may not have like the hip flexibility to sort of coast over a guy in deep hip flexion a lot. And then also, as far as guard retention and guard playing, I'm looking to get back to my feet to play a half guard game and to wrestle up rather than avoiding sort of, you can't invert to the same degree, and if you do, you're more like to stretch over structures by inverting because your lower back's going to compensate for your hips.
Well, those are all good points. I mean, it's something that you found in your own game, isn't it? That you've had people telling you that you just need to work on your mobility and things like that. And what difference did it make when you started thinking about building your game around your body type rather than the other way around?
It made a big difference in, like, you've got attributes and weaknesses, you've got strengths and weaknesses, and by like focusing more on my strengths and building a game around them rather than building a game around an excessive mobility, which a lot of jiu-jitsu coaches and practitioners do, which is great because that might be the strength. But if your strength is sort of like being strong, explosive, maybe building a top game and a bottom game that blends into your wrestling, it's probably going to be more beneficial than necessarily.
Yeah. I think this is a particularly important topic when we start talking about hips, because hips are one of those areas where we can't necessarily turn somebody. We can't necessarily give somebody a lot more mobility if their hips aren't built that way. So in some cases we can increase it a little bit, but we don't necessarily want to be turning somebody into something they're not. I think sometimes we can cause more problems than we solve by trying to increase a person's range of movement to the hip rather than trying to get them moving in a way that respects that. Would you say that's been your experience?
Yeah, absolutely. I mean, a lot of the really, really flexible guys who I come across in jiu-jitsu, you'll tend to find it's like a fast guy that you meet. They kind of are born that way to some extent, and like trying to force like a square peg into a round hole doesn't always work. And sometimes building stability in an area and building a game around an area is more important than sort of trying to change your body morphology. I mean, also it's a very jiu-jitsu, especially with the wrestling component, it's a contact sport. There are collisions, and like it's sometimes forcing someone to become way more flexible than they are can cause more issues on collision than otherwise.
I mean, I think it's one of those things where we start looking at ideal body types for particular sports. I mean, for example, the obvious one is something like basketball. If you're not tall, you know, if you're 5'4", you're never going to be a world-class basketball player. And I think that's true with a lot of sports. There is an ideal body type. And one of the things with jiu-jitsu and mixed martial arts is that it is accessible to people with a range of different body types. But I think it's important to have a game that suits you, isn't it?
Yeah, absolutely. That is the beauty of martial arts and jiu-jitsu and wrestling is you can be tall, you can be short, you can be long, you can be flexible, you can be slow, you can be all of those things and make a game work. I think it's just up to the coaches to identify like their athlete isn't them.
And from a coach's point of view, would you say it's important to acknowledge that different people are going to move differently? So not everyone, you're not going to turn all of your students into a clone of you. You've got to find a game that's going to work based on their body.
Exactly that. It's got to be individualised. So where I think that everything's got to be individualised, from what weight, what lifts they're doing in the gym to what techniques they're using on the mat and in the cage. It will suit a body type.
So just because you really like to do something, it doesn't mean that all your students are going to turn out the same way.
Exactly. If you're a really long, flexible guard player, you try and teach that person a double leg, they're going to feel really awkward doing it, and vice versa. You teach, a 5'3" guy trying to triangle people, he's going to have a hard time trying to triangle people, and they're going to get frustrated by forcing them to do something that they're just not greatly able to do.
And I think, to be fair, the best coaches I've worked with do this naturally anyway. They'll find something, a game that works for the person. But I think it's easy when you stop thinking about it to fall back into the trap of teaching what you like to do. And I think that's when you coach particularly, that's where you've got to broaden your game out and have a range of different options.
Yeah.
Excellent. Well, thanks for chatting to us. Just a quick segment there, and thank you for watching.